positively, extra optimistic. I'm extra optimistic. I'm extra optimistic. Extra optimistic.
Hey everybody, Medium Brandon Russ. Welcome to Extra Optimistic, where we bring solutions instead of just problems. That doesn't mean that the problems don't exist. It just means we're going to move on and be grown-ups about it. Joining me today is Dr. Bill Relyea. He has a very special doctorate and fascinating people. And by the way, get used to guests like this, because Extra Optimistic is about bringing you the people that you actually are going to need after, I don't know, the collapse of all the things that didn't work. I don't mean to sound negative right out of the gate, but after all, we are in the rebuild mode, whether you like it or not. We are. Dr. Bill, good to see you.
Great to see you, Brandon. Thanks for having me on.
This is the climate of today and consciousness, and what we're going to be talking about here today is about the evolution of consciousness and kind of where this is going, and the quantitative work that you've been studying in this on how consciousness is really becoming, like it or not, we're kind of being moved into this kind of new age. Do you want to give everybody kind of a brief synopsis on like what your work has been and what your study is really kind of focused in on in terms of consciousness?
Yeah, happy to do that. For the record, my research is qualitative in nature.
There it is.
Not quantitative.
Listen, I like correction.
No. And the reason is there's 30 years of research on the books about personality, about leadership and emotional intelligence. In particular, my degrees, master's, my graduate, and my doctorate are in the realm of industrial organizational psychology, which is human behavior in a workplace, in an organization at all, right? But my background was I was 30 years as a nurse,
right?
So what I have experienced and what led me to my research was the paradigm that we're dealing with today. And in fact, I just saw an article this morning, I think in Inc. magazine, that only 30% of the workforce has an interest in moving up the ladder and becoming a leader, or in the vernacular, a manager. Right. And if you recall, as Gen Xers, right? I mean, that was kind of the model that we were all fed.
Well, Bill,
we were organization. You become manager. You become leader. You become whatever.
We were given, what you're talking about is the golden watch theory. Like, you get in, you learn, the company takes care of you. They create a codependency with you. They create, but then you actually provide a value, whether you're turning widgets or you're selling paper or whatever. That was there, and it's funny because being in corporate recruiting for a long time, I saw that crumbling a long time ago. I mean, I had some major GE style companies that would they had no problem. They wanted turnover. So all of a sudden the gold watch thing was out of the way. But yeah, that's kind of the social condition that would wake you up to this, right?
Precisely. So, through personal and career crossroads, I made pivots from nursing, ended up in the legal world, went to law school, left law school. There were lawyers there. Nobody advertised that, right. or I wasn't paying attention. And in the process, I came across this notion, and drawing on my background as both an athlete and an athletics coach.
Right.
Why the disconnect between why does team culture in an athletic standpoint, which is a finite situation, a finite game, you have the same team for a season, and every season you have a new team, therefore culture needs to be rebuilt. But it doesn't exist that way in corporate.
Right.
For a myriad of reasons, right? So anyway, this all became very fascinating to me. And what Inc.'s article spoke about this very morning is what the trend has demonstrated over the last 15, 20 years in my own personal experience, and then, of course, in my research, is that It's the Peter principle, really is. And I think that that's driven by an organization's desire for efficiency, but also, unfortunately, a disconnect between management theory and leadership theory. And that is,
Yeah.
hey, if you were fantastic in your cubicle, right, whatever that is, your bench, your cubicle, your office, whatever,
Right.
you therefore then are very qualified to lead this unit, this team, and lead others. And the fly in the ointment here is, that individual did not go through sociology, psychology, personnel psychology, organizational design and development, had any connection at all to theories and ideas and what have you from SHRM, and that's a whole different conversation. But they're just ill-equipped.
Yeah, right.
And then what you get is somebody who now is, and here's where Sengi comes in, right, with the systems thinking and the organizational systemic pressures, is they have performance requirements and they have to get it out of people, and the only thing they can go back to is what they experienced from their previous managers and leadership, whatever that looks like, as well as their own behavioral patterns in how they cope with the stress of, I need an outcome.
Right. And doesn't it still come down to, as much as you have organizations that have set up, and it's so funny because having an organizational background degree myself, which by the way, I don't apply whatsoever. I don't know if you know, I don't know if you picked up on that or not. It's just kind of the way it is. But anyways, the dynamic though, from an organizational management standpoint, is how intrinsically powerful the individual still is, because you still have everything from like personal performers, you have the idea that you have individual leadership, and that idea that like you still have to be personally driven. Well, when, what are you seeing in the qualitative analysis part of it? Like, how have you seen that shift now for individuals to be more, say, individual as opposed to buying into the into the old way, and what's the new way that people are going to want to buy into? So,
such a deep question.
It is, and I don't mean to jump the shark here with this, but I think that's part of what what you're talking about, and what your study has been how people like me think about where we're going. Because, when you see fear mongering, you see whatever, you realize that like they've ratcheted up whatever negativity it is that they can, right? So now you're realizing that the survival mode, even of organizations, need to evolve, because you also tackle a very important thing in your work where, you talk about how it's not just about being present anymore. Like, it's not about buzzwords. Like, it's almost like it's like how you're approaching it is like you have to move beyond the buzzwords, where HR has done a really good job for the last 15, 20 years in buzzwording the crap out of us by going like, we're going to be a unit and we're going to unify and we're about independent, blah, blah, blah. How does this
starts at 11:30?
What's that, Bill?
I said Kumbaya starts at 11:30.
Correct. And by the way, beatings will resume until morale is
right. 12:30. We're going to resume activities.
Right. So what are you discovering with that, especially with the buzzwords and the being present part?
Yeah. So let me go back to where where I found the gap to exist, and to be a disruptor. But in terms of the advocate for the individual, right? So again, what I found is, to your point, and I have to bring up the name, of course, Daniel Goleman, who popularized emotional intelligence. He is not the seminal researcher. He is a clinical psychologist from Harvard, certainly a brilliant man, who forged relationship through his research and connections to Howard Gardner, another brilliant man, PhD, responsible for the theory in the late 70s of multiple intelligences, which impacted our education process.
Yeah.
Right? In a positive way. It is Mayer and Salovey who are the seminal researchers of the construct emotional intelligence. And their approach was quantitative.
Mm.
They later incorporated David Caruso, who is an executive coach. He has graduate degree, but I don't believe he is terminal degree, but that's immaterial. The point is, they wanted to study what they were observing as a mental ability, a skill set, and could they quantify it?
Mm.
And after 20 years of research on their own, they came to the stunning conclusion that we still don't know if we're measuring the proper attributes, and B, this thing is still evolving. Enter Daniel Goleman, 1990-ish, 95, right?
I love that the balloons just popped up.
I didn't do that. Squirrel. So Goleman takes this idea of emotional intelligence and he drops it into the construct of multiple intelligences. We're going to call this interpersonal and intrapersonal intelligence.
And it's interesting too, because you take somebody like John Sabatkin, who basically gave us the modern mindfulness meditation methods, right? And he was a corporate guy. He kept saying, like, if you read any of his stuff, he would even say, I don't know where this goes yet, but when I would meditate, they would tell me this is where it is. And I have found, and I want to save a question for later about how we're kind of in this predictive AI world where people that have been innovators in this, some of the researchers that you've talked about, even yourself, I think you have written a paper that's going to be understood 20 years from now. Well, and I think the struggle is for the next 15 years, you're going to push through to be like, this is what I'm talking about. This is another example. These are the things. But when John, initiated his meditation theories, and I studied him quite a bit because I was doing mindfulness in the classroom, and I was going into school districts, and I was sitting with teachers. It's funny. A lot of the school, it's so funny. Some of the school districts were like, "Oh, talk to our special ed department," and I'm like, "Oh, okay." You've got other departments, like that's not. They some of them didn't think it was general education principle, and then others really embraced it. Like they would have mindful moments, they would incorporate that in their mindfulness, they would do those things. And again, I know where I'm going with this it's definitely a little off topic, but from an organizational thing of what people are being brought into over the last even 10 years, where it's like they're instituting mindfulness. Mindfulness was on the cover of Time. They did a whole series on it. You're seeing it from all of these standpoints. How does that then, incorporate it into this kind of like breakthrough model of a deeper performance, of a deeper, stat? Like, how are you going to hook into that and build on it?
So again, for the audience, right? You and I have had conversation, which precipitated this interaction.
For hours, everybody.
Hours. Yeah. For the audience, the fly in the ointment with emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
Is that, and multiple researchers, and I'm gonna call Goleman a researcher, but his impact and his work in emotional intelligence was that of journalist. Documentarian, certainly has participated in some studies since. Again, this is 20 years, right? So again, I'm not throwing shade. What I'm saying is, just like with Peter Sengi's idea of the learning organization, very nebulous, very esoteric, and the problem inherent to it, to the solution it was supposed to provide, is that you take all that and you take it back to your organizational systems and the systems of people, and when the rubber meets the road, I use the metaphor or the analogy that the schoolyard bully is still in the schoolyard. We haven't changed the inherent systemic challenges. So no matter of how inspired you felt over the weekend with your new emotional intelligence training, and even your personality report, you get into the systems on Monday, and if you're lucky, you get to Wednesday and you still have lunch money.
Yeah.
But that's not what I'm finding, and that's not what the research is saying. So here's what I suggest.
Yeah.
Emotional intelligence needs to be reframed. And as an executive coach, I would align it with action frame theory. Okay. So look, you go to the big mall and you see the big billboard, the map of the landscape, and it's got a red dot or a star or what have you. It says, you are here.
Yeah.
But you want to get to name the outlet, right? So you've got to go down the escalator.
I'm always looking to go to 21 or the food court. I mean, one way or the other.
Sure, whatever, right?
My fashion sense or this part right here, mostly food court.
But you see on the map, hey, there's 5 different ways to get to where I want to get to. This might be the most efficient. This one here passes this other store, which I might want to get to. And this one requires me a little more effort, blah, 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 blah. That is emotional intelligence. We have to put a pin in that. Because teaching somebody through check boxes, through slogans, through weekend seminars and workshops, emotional intelligence is literally, and forgive me, it's lipstick on a pig.
Yeah.
What I have discovered through my research is that the linchpin to presence is accurate self-awareness. Well, what is accurate in self-awareness? You ask anybody of conscious age, 14 and beyond, and I'm aware of myself. I know who I am. The challenge here is that we have no rigor to that perception and understand the neuroscience. Both personality and perception exist in the prefrontal cortex of the neocortex, the top of the brain, right? So this is McLean's model from the 60s, okay? And you can filter, right? 1967, right? And it's immaterial. This is what the brain structure and function is.
Okay. So this is also where we get the difference. Like when you're 7 years old, you know the difference between right or wrong. When you're 14, you actually have self-awareness. When you're
supposedly the grand theories. So McLean brought structure and function. Freud, Erickson, Jung, right? The Neo-Freudians, they still have the construct of psychoanalysis suggesting that there is id, ego, and superego. And in and out of that, there is a subconscious. There is a preconscious. And both of those are unconscious. And they can only communicate with the conscious through neuro impulse. So if we incorporate an I'm losing the word that I want here, but superimpose the two constructs. Yeah, the midbrain is where we find the ego. The neocortex is where we find the superego.
Let's go here a little bit because when you bring up psychoanalysts, and by the way, anybody that does spiritual work, one of the stops on the tour, 100% is Carl Jung. Like, you may dabble in Freud, but the Carl Jungism brings out so much of the psyche. He is one of the most quoted.
Embraced it.
And embrace it. It's funny when somebody that I spoke to once upon a time in the know was talking about the rise of Oprah. And I said, well, how is that? Well, yeah, it had to be brought into the consciousness. And everybody that she brought in, she was kind of pulling apart different people, different people that were doctors, that were like, they were in the pop art, but what they were trying to do is they were trying to take something of scientific value and bringing a psychoanalysis into it. Your Phils, your Oz's, your whatever. And the people that were really beneficial were the ones that were, like when she had Wayne Dyer on years ago, when she had, oh my gosh, I'm looking right at him and I can't. Deepak, Deepak basically rewords Carl Jung over and over again. He rewords him. Notice how I'm not saying steal. He rewords him on a consistent basis. But when you're in that psychoanalysis part of it, we also talk about our self-realization, right? Because ultimately that's where it's going. What is your self-realization? how are we supposed to recognize those things where you're like, we've been thinking about it this way, but we have to really see it this way because here's the reality, here's where the data is. What are some of the things that we can do to shift that so we have control over it?
So here's it in a nutshell, right? The so what and then into the what now.
Right.
To attain accurate self-awareness, and if I can, I'll explain the framework that I have developed and I'm trying to bring to the world, if you will. Accurate self-awareness requires psychometrics because if you understand and at least adhere to the psychoanalytic theory, the job of the ego is to protect us, even from ourselves.
Sure.
So very broad strokes here, right? Would you consider yourself to be a masochist? No. But hold that thought. Let's just say you've got a bit of an aversion to spiders and snakes, particularly when they're in your house.
Somewhat accurate.
So you take some internal gratification of seeing the head lopped off of the snake or the crunch of the shell of the spider underneath your toe.
Mm-hmm.
Is that not masochism?
It is, and I'm gonna blow this out to socioeconomics now. Isn't this part of the masochistic tendency that you're seeing now of retribution?
Well, okay, so
right,
we'll come back to that. I love that. We'll come back to it.
Yeah.
So stick with me for a moment, okay? So what I'm getting at here is we require psychometrics which have built into them forced choice questions, motivation distortion questions to kind of keep us in alignment of what is the truth of our perception. So I'm going to go back to Piaget and I'm going to go back to neuroscience. Piaget's grand theory was that by the age of 12, you are now a fully functional, conscious adult. And I'm going to call BS. And he would later amend it. Okay, but this is the problem with grand theories when it comes down to application. That frontal lobe that I was just talking about from a neuroscientific standpoint, from a psychological standpoint, does not reach maturation until about the age of 25. For the female species, it's sooner rather than later, 25, 27.
Don't we know that?
Some might even argue that they never get there. So,
they're not wrong. They ain't wrong, buddy.
Yeah, right. Insert all kinds of jokes, right? So now, again, I'm back to the construct of the psychoanalytic. If the midbrain can only interact with the neocortex, the frontal lobe, via impulse, electric impulse, neurological impulse, no language, we're left to the interpretation that takes place in the frontal lobe where the personality and the perception both exist. In the midbrain is where we have the limbic system. And anybody who grew up in the 70s, born in the 60s, will remember Lost in Space and The Robot.
Sure.
Danger Will Robinson. Will Robinson.
Right.
That is the limbic system. So if we do not have accuracy in a quantitative measurement of one's traits, attributes, behavioral patterns, we cannot get to accurate self-awareness. Furthermore, what my research says is that also needs to accompany a skilled thought partner. So from the organizational world, we have an organizational development specialist.
I love that you're
psychologist.
I love that you're tying in this. I love that you're tying in this because I think we all need a partner in our development. And what your argument is here is the organization then becomes that partner in a way, right?
Sure, right. And here's the problem with that. They have their own agenda.
Here we go.
And it's not your best interest that they have as their agenda, right? So again, this skilled partner creates let's call it in the vernacular of coaching, a sacred space where we can provide psychological safety, where you can be completely vulnerable without judgment.
Huh.
Where I can then say to you, hey, Brandon, your fly is down. Hey, Jane, your slip is showing.
Right.
And maybe would you reconsider, or could you consider something else, right? And then I pose to you in action frame theory some ideas of what emotional intelligence skill sets you could employ. We can role play. We can mastermind something. We got a whiteboard. We got a notebook. We can throw ideas. We can do the Italian kitchen thing, right? Let's see what sticks to the cabinet. If you are left to interpret some AI output of data, it's no different than a relational database, right? Crap in, crap out.
Yeah.
You must take in the data, you must filter and clean it, and then analyze it. And then you get information, usable information, not wisdom, information. Right. So let's go back to accurate self-awareness as the foundation. And now let's expand it to 5D.
Here we go.
Are making your way into your place of employment. And maybe you've got children, maybe you've got parents, maybe you've got something going on in your family that you've left behind, but you are now expected to compartmentalize that. Okay. Now, but it's still white noise somewhere. And on the way, right? Some type of, I don't know, atmospheric event takes place. There's rain and it's a construction zone and there's a fender bender because people drive with, cell phones in their hands and whatever.
Okay.
And that causes you to show up late.
Right.
How do you process that stress?
Well, hold on a second. Let's talk about those factors for a second because
no, because there's more. Yeah.
Because then you have, and this is where like your triad of reciprocity. I've been practicing.
Triadic reciprocity. Yes,
you
sir.
say it so well. Like you had to present it. You were like, I'm bulletproof. I say it. I sound like I'm like
a little.
I sound like I'm a sixth grader reading a book report. But with that, you've got that thing of being late. And like when I teach consciousness, I talk about the boundary method of it, where boundaries are actually meant to make you accelerate. And by accelerating, you're getting rid of garbage. You're getting rid of things that no longer serve you. You boundary up certain things. You also boundary up that emotion. You also bring up the ancestral wound challenge with it too. That like there is something intrinsic there that makes you the way that you are, period. And if you're not aware of it, you're going to keep repeating that, right?
Precisely.
That is
if you don't have a thought partner to say, hey, this is what your report says you have tendencies as. And again, remember, most human behavior exists on the continuum between a perceived fear or threat and a perceived safety or gratification. It's not static.
Take that late situation. Why are the reasons why we're not late? The reasons why we're not late is because you don't want to be inconsiderate. Well, who gave you that inconsideracy?
Right. That's
it's a societal thing, or it's what my mama taught me, or
maybe what you learned in your family. That's right.
And then you have the dynamic of well, I'm building a relationship with a person. I mean, I have a 19-year-old. He's about to turn 19. I say to him all the time, I'm like, everything is a relationship. That's why you get to, you're starting a new job. Do you show up 15 minutes late? No. Why? Because there's a societal norm there of performance. There's a societal norm to this. Is there room for consciousness in that, though?
Well, so I'm gonna answer your question with another question, and then I can answer it with my research. Right? Is again, by whose standard are you in a state of awareness or consciousness? If we're relying on an individual's perception of their reality, there's no triangulation. It's how I see the world. It's my glasses. There's no one to add, sustain, or take away from your perceived reality. Now, again, in 5 dimensions, this is where we're going with this accurate self-awareness. This is the foundation. Practicing the understanding of the kaleidoscope of influence on your emergent behavior. That includes your assumptions, whether you know them or not, your biases. That includes the receiver's perceptions and biases and what have you, and whether they're aware of them is immaterial. The systems, the constructs of society, the systems within the organization itself, and the systems within you as an individual. This is multidimensional. And now let's add a little woo, right? Astrology was replaced with astronomy for a reason, because no one could quantify scientifically astrology. So we had to now quantify the measurement, the motions, the reoccurring relationships in alignment to the sun of the outer bodies of our galaxy.
Well,
so again,
we can stay on that too for a second, because
there's so many rabbit holes, Brandon.
Yeah, astrology is the faith of it, right? And then astronomy is the proof of it. And well, that's a fair description. I'm going to put a bookmark in this, because I hope you guys are enjoying this, because Bill and I are going to do our regular fireside chats like this. And if you have other topics about consciousness and qualitative analysis in our evolution, I want you to send me a message. Send me an email through any one of the platforms. We'll get a little more formal of this on the same time, but I know Bill's going to be a regular on this to further these discussions, because there's not just one topic. Part of the reason why Bill and I have had so many conversations and why you've been a guest in my Conscious Becoming class and, all this other stuff is because this is such a deep topic, and it is a wavering topic, because we're going to emerge more things. So as we kind of go along in this, we're going to be probably a little more topical, but being able to give everybody a really good overview of some of the things that are in consideration for awareness towards consciousness. That's part of our job here. That's part of our way to kind of this, I think, is a very good tool in our toolkit as we're evolving away from the fear metrics that are being forced on us, because that internal id, that ego-driven id, is going to become very important to say, I will do anything. It's kind of like, I will do anything for love, but I won't do that. Meatloaf was psychic in that regard, because it's a very conscious statement where it's like, I will we have painted ourselves in a corner with our rhetoric, personal rhetoric of well, I always have this and I always have that, and I will always do this. All you have to do is watch the final scene in The Good Son and say, no, sometimes choices are hard and you have to let go of something that you've always held on to. And this is such an impressive topic, and it's so sweeping. And as you find your home in this, I want to be the home as a guest for you, because this is such a deep conversation. And by the way, I know a lot of you are absolutely loving this kind of talk, because this is how we think. This is how the next generation of consciousness is going to be. So you've made it this far. Like and subscribe, share with your friends, all that stuff. And we're going to stop for just a second. I'm going to say a word from the sponsor, and then we're going to be right back. I'm medium Brandon Russ, and I have a message for you. I'm inviting you to join me on my current theater tour here in the fall of 2025. I'm supporting small theater groups, art centers, and community action programs that are bringing the world into a better place of consciousness. I'm inviting you to come along, not just because we're supporting these things, but because you need a message. I use improv, I use humor, and who am I doing this with? Well, of course, your loved ones. I'm connecting with spirit, and I'm delivering messages in a way that you can't really find anyplace else. I'm inviting you to attend any one of these. And by the way, you will enjoy this, and there'll be light, love, and laughter all along the way. I'm going to give you the heart taps and remind you to keep going. And I can't wait to see you here on the theater tour in 2025. All right, Bill. So we're here. We're talking about this qualitative consciousness, or at least understanding consciousness from a qualitative standpoint. Where are we going with this? Because we're
well, again, I'm still mapping out the framework that I've come up with, and it starts with the linchpin of the accuracy and self-awareness. And to your point, right, you're asking about consciousness, and I think we have to be careful of how we define the words that we use. To your very point, as you closed out the last segment, right, the rhetoric that we choose to use and assume in our definitions, right? And the only thing I'm throwing out here is, let's learn to be more curious. Let's learn to break some things down and unpack them rather than taking them at face value.
Critical thinking.
All the time. Critical thinking, because I think I think that is the ultimate in this, in that. So it is true. Let me start with it. Let's talk theory. And you know what? Maybe every time we talk, we'll create a theory that people can work with and then take from. A thought experiment more so than a theory, yeah?
I mean, welcome to Brandon. I mean, come on. Have you seen any of my work? But with that in mind, Bill, it's like, developing a theory to be like, hey, what are the things we have control over? And if that emotional intelligence is there. Let's talk about meditation for a minute. And I know I'm throwing you a curveball here because we've talked about everything but meditation except for that as an aftercloud. But isn't a meditation routine the one thing that we can personally do that is void of all of these other factors that you're going to need when all of these other factors come in?
Yeah, it's a great question. And again, if you allow me, I don't want to be put in a box. that's my own MO, right?
Listen, though, well, let's establish this because I think this is a good thing, Bill. Like I get you now that you're a doctor and all, and we have to kind of like work with that. Listen, I can say I remember you when, but with that in mind, the goal isn't to necessarily say adamant C's that this is the way it's going to be. The way that I want to kind of approach this is to say, let's prove out some of these theories. Let's prove out some of these ideas for people to take from so they can give us feedback, so they can start to say to us, hey, saw you on the last show and here you go. And meditation is something that we all like. It's a stop on the tour. Where at some point, I mean, I remember I had a psychic development teacher go, we're all going to meditate. And I said, why? And she looked at me and she goes, because that's what you do. And I'm like, man, that's no good. Why do we do it? And that's when I started to learn sympathetic, parasympathetic, how our nervous system works, all of that other stuff. But that being said, could the equation include, how about not exclusive, include what we do with a meditation plan and what we do with a meditation routine?
Yeah, and I think it's important to consciously, let's change that word to intentionally.
I love it. Nailed it.
Intentionally practice something. What is the intent behind your meditation? Is it to ground yourself? Is it to clear your mind? Is it to take out the trash?
Is it to heal?
Is it to tap into your belief that you can heal your body? You can heal your mind. You can whatever. Again, this is the intentionality of. And it does overlap with some of our theologies, right? Who believes what, and the impact of that belief system, and so on and so forth. Here's something. I started every psychology class I've ever taught at the semester with a disclaimer, and it is this: if your truth holds veracity, then it can withstand a little scrutiny. We can take it to the lab. We can pressure test it. We can heat test it. We can shave some of it off and see if it breaks into compounds, if it distills into something different.
And you can build conditions around it.
And does it have an electrical charge? Does it have, I mean, there's so many ways that you can investigate your own foundation. And from that, now we're getting to the accuracy of self-awareness.
Right.
It's multidimensional.
Well, and again, this isn't, I want to be somewhat kind of topical into the world today. And maybe we're not going to solve it. Let's just assume that mine and your job is not to solve anything, but to thought provoke people to movement. Fair enough.
Sure.
And I've learned how to discuss things with Bill, everybody, just to let you know. But as we see people be so reticent to back a political entity, notice what I call them, is that their lack of awareness, or is that them having a non-elastic truth that when they built their truth, they didn't allow for the elasticity of other information? And does truth require you to be open? So
you're now tapping into a secondary discipline that is empathy. Okay, so
here we go, everybody. Here we go. Get your popcorn.
If empathy is the recognition of an emotional state of another.
Here we go.
Notice I did not say apply your PsyD or your clinical PhD and make a diagnosis. The recognition of another's state of emotion. Brandon, you look like you might be feeling a little blue today. Brandon, something bugging you? You seem a little intense. I'm not judging. I'm asking what could possibly be going on in your world that is not of the ordinary. Notice the curiosity in that.
Yeah, because you're
right. It's not.
How do you not judge?
It isn't driving that. This is accuracy in self-awareness and understanding my own world. There's a storm. It's a low pressure system. It's giving me a migraine. And yet I walked into the room and there's differing degrees of temperature in all of the bodies that I'm encountering energetically.
Yeah. Okay.
And I don't know what is bothering you, but I know that something is impacting your homeostasis, the balance of you within. I'm not offering a solution. I'm offering a partner.
This is
seek understanding.
This is where you can really go down a rabbit hole, though, because, and this is what I've seen, and I work with a lot of people that are empathetic, right? That just have a natural empathy. Maybe it was a conditional empathy, maybe it was a reward-based empathy, those sorts of things. But what I'm seeing is that people are developing empathy, or at least they were grifted on this empathy to create the, oh, poor them, or, oh, I need to fix them, or, oh, I need to help them, or, hey, I can whatever.
Right.
And I see that being manipulated. How does that then get manipulated in that consciousness? Because again, how do you know when you're up against somebody that's not conscious? That might be the deeper question here.
And maybe it is in, again, that continuum of fear to gratification in their world, that they're feeling threatened in some way, shape, or form. And the way that they learned to diffuse that and get the attention that they needed was to behave in a certain way. So we can throw into this attachment theory. We can throw into this other paradigms that affect emergent behavior, right?
Yeah.
Maslow's hierarchy. Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Well, right? There you go.
Here's why it's flawed. And even Maslow would amend it before his passing. It takes in, it assumes that if you meet your primary needs, check off the boxes, you can then move into this next level. Right now I'm seeking association. Now I'm seeking sociological connection. If I don't have the wherewithal to buy the groceries or put the roof over the head, do I know someone who I can get it from? where I can hang out on a couch, or I can, get some assistance. And then we move into, ultimately what he said was self-actualization.
Yeah.
Well, the flaw with that grand theory is that none of us in civilized culture exists in a bubble, in a vacuum. We are part of multiple networks. Moreover, just because you checked the box on hunger this morning at 0630 doesn't mean that your body's not going to tell you, yo, it's 4:30. We need us a little protein.
When you're hungry, you're hungry. Speaking of which, where's that food court? Yeah.
Right, because at 3:30, you're starting to get hangry, right? And somebody needs to slide you a Snickers bar. Right. And I love that Betty White commercial from Snickers. A Robin Williams one was fantastic too. But anyway, here's the whole thing, right? So none of this shows up on the radar of consciousness if you don't have an accurate understanding of self and the myriad influences upon your status of homeostasis.
And
the psychological, the mental, the physiological, the emotional, they are all separate conductors.
Yep. And that's why you're talking about a thought partner. That's why you're talking about, that thought partner is so important, because we can stand in front of the mirror all we want, but we're going to see the same patterns. We're going to see the same things. We're going to be like,
we're going to ignore. Right. So here's Strength Finder is fantastic, right? Strength Finder says, hey, you've got a mark on your face. That's not a blemish. That's a beauty mark.
That's right. Thank you very much, Cindy Crawford. Right. Which, by the way, Cindy Crawford was very important to my development, but we don't have to go into it right here.
I don't want to know about that.
Yeah. Everybody just kind of jumped.
Yeah. So to your point,
everybody just Googled Brandon and Cindy. I'm just telling you.
The mirror does not always tell you the truth.
Sure.
So that is why you need the objectivity of another who is also grounded in the understanding of accuracy of self.
Why does the mirror lie?
That's up for debate. But if we stay in the realm of the psychoanalytical, its job is to protect us. Now, that is influence. Again, we're back to perception. What influences perception? Sure. How you came up, what house you came up in, and the value systems and the things that were important that you learned. You took that out to the playground in middle school, the hard knocks of life. You then matriculated into high school, where you start to cement those things, and maybe you went on to a tertiary education where you really got a graduate level experimentation of what values are and what you accept and what you believe. And again, you have to ask questions about that, because just do that simple lineage, right? There's all kinds of ways that can be misconstrued, that there can be artifice, there can be disturbances in the perception. And again, if you don't have an accurate perception of reality, Brandon, right now it is 85 degrees outside and I got my toes in the sand. No, that's not true.
No, because it's a cool New England 53 right now, just to let you know. The leaves are struggling already.
Without that input and that counterbalance, I cannot distill from that and say, oh yeah, he's 350 miles away from me. His climate might be different.
Right. So then you have science to show us the isobars on how it gets warmer the more south you go, right?
That's right.
So the conceptual and the context here that I think you're really bringing to the table for those of you that are on a spiritual journey is to check yourself with just the kumbayas, to check yourself with just the light and love. Because listen, all those things are important. Like we're understand, we're not saying that they're not important. We're not saying
not at all
that those aren't part of the equation. We're actually saying it's only part of the equation. And we get so satisfied. And maybe one of the topics that we'll do is actually talking about spiritual bypassing and what's the qualitative reasons why we spiritually bypass. Because I know that your work is with organizations and you work with You work with leaders on the consistent. You work with big organizations that are making conscious shifts right now. And if you need to,
large and small, I even work with individuals. So yes, sir.
Exactly. And that's, and if it, look for the information here below in this, whether you're on YouTube, whether you hear us on Spotify, whether you hear us on iTunes, go ahead and click on the link, send us a message through that. We'll get you connected with Bill when you need him. And it's an interesting thing for me because, I've always, as much as I'm a medium, I've really been playing with the idea that maybe mediumship, or at least what I do, I can't lecture everybody else. But I see what like a British medium does. Well, I see their techniques and I picked apart, I was qualitative and quantitative at the same time. I saw what I saw. I observed it. They do the same thing over and over again. And it's not bad. I'm not again, it's not throwing shade. But I'm like, that's not me. And then as I start to realize I stay in this stream of consciousness when I connect, well, I don't hear another medium talk about that. I don't hear another medium go, oh yeah, well, I just kind of connect. They might talk about flow and they might talk about their connection or whatever. But I'm starting to think that what I'm doing isn't necessarily mediumship, although it is talking with spirits. It is talking with loved ones. I am tapping into knowledge that I would not have known otherwise. But maybe what I'm doing is actually something on a quantum physics level that is connecting that energy to it. And all of these disciplines that you're talking about are the things that I picked apart. Like that's why when you and I started talking, I'm like, he talks like I think. Like what is that? And again, forget about the personal stuff. I mean, that's always like, hey, how are the kids? How's this? Blah, 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 all that stuff. But then there's the other part, Bill, where when your science and your research go hand in hand with what drives you. And let's ask this as a good question to kind of get us into our next episode as we wrap up here today. What drives you for this? Like, what intrinsic thing pushed you to the point where you said, I got to look at this. I can't not, I'm waking up to it. I'm seeing it everywhere. I'm seeing repetition. I'm seeing, I think I can really help people. Like, where was your motivational factor?
Yeah. Well, candidly, and it's not an uncommon phenomenon, but people who find themselves in arenas of this type of service, it is opined and literature would suggest that, you're trying to resolve either some experiences that you had yourself that you considered to be less than standard. It may be a part of, maybe you're trying to rescue the inner child. Again, we're back to the psychoanalytics. The inner adolescent, the young adult. I mean, again, I think that you find with executive coaches and psychologists in particular, and again, I do use both quantitative and qualitative in my work, right? I rely on the quantitative to dive into the qualitative, and then to validate it, I come back to the quantitative. So, but anyway, can it be measured, right? Can your perception and your lived experience, which is uniquely yours, can it be shared, and can I confirm it, and can I transfer it, right? Does it have validity and weight?
Yeah.
And again,
in a way, I mean, listen, you just scienced the tar out of this, and I love it. But what I'm hearing, I'm going to go life coach for 30 seconds.
Come on.
What I'm hearing is that what you really want to do is understand how this is going to help people, because you think you figured out the code.
Yeah, well, that's exactly it, is right. Okay, so for 20 years, people have been hearing that emotional intelligence is this magnificent silver bullet. Yeah, and it's not. Without being grounded scientifically in accuracy of your self-awareness, utilizing a thought partner to help you, emotional intelligence just becomes lipstick on a pig, because you have not eradicated, you have not shown a light on the areas that your ego will not allow you to investigate, left to your own mirror.
I think it's lipstick on a pig because I think we throw it around. It's lost its meaning.
Yeah, it's the
thing that we were talking about, right?
It's the one-hit wonder that plays, all summer long, every 17 minutes, right?
But it still has a place in this, though. It still.
I'm not throwing stones.
Yeah.
It is a skill set that can be developed and is very valuable, but it doesn't solve the underlying problems of your unconsciousness of your own awareness. You can't get to that. You can't use that tool until you have the accuracy of understanding. And then you develop the discipline of empathy. And with empathy, right? That's the practice of presence. Then we can move on to, a new skill set, emotional intelligence. And then guess what happens? Here's where we go meta. You get prescience. You can start to anticipate with thoughtfulness, mindfulness, blah, 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 blah. Yeah.
Because I'm raising my hand. I'm also waving to you because I have to tell you that's actually what my work is. And I cannot thank you enough for being in my life, because one of the things that I've recognized, I sometimes, like when I come out and I do a show, I already know where I'm going. I've already connected to them. So that anticipation of kindness, might I add, of that delivery of saying, hey, here's the solace of your loved ones, and hey, here you go. That's why I'm like, is spirit that good? Is spirit that clear cognizant for me that I can walk into it? And in mediumship and spiritual work, it's called claircognizance, because you have an advanced knowledge to it.
And there are multiple clairs.
Right. And the
clairaudience, clairvoyance, claircognizance.
Right. So it's the clear knowing. It's the clear understanding. It's I don't know how I know this about you, Bill, but here's your grandmother's name.
That's right.
And then you go, wow, he's a really good medium. And then I go, I don't know. And by the way, it all started, my entire journey took off when I started to say, I don't know.
Well, okay. So in kind, right? Your question was, what drove me to this? And it was the desire to help the flawed leadership that I've witnessed for 35 years.
Yeah.
It's not their fault. It's the system.
Got it.
And they were given slogans and check boxes. And here's your new tool. There's your emotional intelligence. Just be more mindful. How stupid is that?
Yes. I listen,
how do you be more mindful if you're not mindful?
It's kind of like, and that is why the people that really get it in this world right now look at part of what's going on. And again, not being political on this show, but why we look at this and we go, what the function, right? How do you, oh my God. We should, and listen, Bill, this is a perfect, spot for us to wrap up, because first of all, you always want to leave, you want to leave them wanting more, because we'll have more conversations.
There's lots of meat on this bone.
Right. It's like, whenever I've got like a home party that's like an hour away and I call Bill, I'm like, Bill, I've been sitting in the driveway for 10 minutes. I got to go in. But anyways, with that in mind, I think that these are some great topics. If you have topics that you want us to tackle, shoot us a message. As things are gonna come together, you're gonna have more access to this. Bill is also looking to connect with you if your organization needs that kind of. If you want to go beyond emotional intelligence, but actually get to a level of performance where you're incorporating these ideas into consciousness, reach out to him. It might just be a question. It might also be something you need him on site from time to time. Both are highly recommended. But Bill, I want to thank you for being an ongoing guest here. You're kind of a cornerstone of what I'm doing here with Extra Optimistic. And like I said, I'm blessed to have you in my life. And I love how you are challenging me and others we're just going to get better by knowing you. And I can't emphasize that enough. Those are my guests on this podcast. We are better for knowing you. And
I'm grateful for those kind words. Thank you.
There you go. And really listen, hard taps to everybody. And I want everybody to simply keep going. We'll see you on the next episode. Bill, thanks again.
Yeah, man. My pleasure.
All right.
I'm extra optimistic. I'm extra optimistic. Extra boxelicious. Exceptionally optimistic. Extra optimistic.
What is thy quantum positivity?
Extra optimistic.
I'm extra optimistic.
I'm extra optimistic. Extra optimistic.